The market made a major move on Friday, ending the losing streak that we had last week, which was kind of parabolic, but everybody was scared and told you guys to hold on tight, and we got back up to highs. With that being said, we did open up with a gap downwards. So honestly, keep that in mind overall, because when the market officially opens, we might have a gap to fill back up to the highs. And then once we get past the highs, it's going to be honestly unmarked territory, and or we could start selling off some more. And honestly, man, in anticipation to Nvidia's earnings on Wednesday, we might see a little bit of profit taken with Nvidia overall. But if we do look at Nvidia's charts, Nvidia is looking a little bit better too. We kind of just opened up in the same range. So just depends on if we can sell off more and or just have a big green for chip stocks in general. We can get the S&P 500 or the SPY to go up a little bit higher. So keep that in mind overall. Just see how it opens. Wait, the 15-minute rule, and then you might be able to trade pretty well. But we have to talk about this week with the market overall and get you guys prepped for this week so that we can stay green. We did not get any major news over the weekend, but last week we got some great news, especially on Friday. We got some major deals with Google, and of course, Jerome pumping up the markets. Jerome came out ending the fear in the market. He came out favoring the labor market overall and shifted the path for the rate cut. He talked about both sides and the dual mandate, and they are trying to balance it, but it favors the labor market overall. They did talk a lot about inflation, but right now they said the risk to employment outweighs the risk to inflation. People are worried about the path to rate cuts, and this painted a more clear picture overall. What he did on Friday was closest we got to him actually cutting in September and kind of hinting towards a cut in September. He said the baseline outlook and the shift balance risk may warrant adjusting their policy shift overall. With all that being said, let's go over the Cauchy first, and then we'll get over to the overall futures chart of a potential rate cut. But we see the odds shifting, and we can see a big bump in the rate cut odds while Jerome came out. This is good for the markets overall, but this is where the bump came in, and then we kind of just maintained that level with that 76% chance of a cut and a 20% chance of a pause. Moving over to the futures chart, it is looking a little bit higher. The futures is pricing in the higher odds of rate cuts, coming in at 85%. As we seen a few weeks ago, I think this was at like 95, but we still made a jump from what we were a week ago, which was like 75 going to the low 70s. So now we're at an 85% chance of a rate cut and a 15% chance of a pause. So overall, the markets, honestly, right now, we got a lot of bullish sentiment overall, but how the markets are moving, honestly, we just got to see how they open up, and then we can see how it looks like overall. But right now, it looks pretty bullish with the news and everything. But with Nvidia's earnings coming out, that's going to be the next biggest event to see what really happens. Nvidia makes up 8% of the S&P 500, and Magnificent Seven, I think it makes like 33 or something like that. I forgot. I said it in Saturday's video. But with that being said, Nvidia has the odds of moving other stocks, especially chip stocks like AVGO, Broadcom, AMD, and some other big stocks that are in the S&P 500. So it can literally move the S&P 500. If we do get a red, we can get a big sell-off with it. And then if we do get a green, we can get past all-time highs and making a new high overall. So we got to talk about crypto, because honestly, man, if you guys follow me on X, you guys seen a lot of posts about crypto over the weekend, especially on Sunday. We did have a big sell-off, and it just continued. With that being said, if we go over to XRP, we're below that $3 level, and we had that sell-off, and it continued. And then one that moved a decent amount just because it did hit a new high, 49.50. We almost hit that 5,000, but after that, man, we sold off, and we continued selling off overall, losing all of the gains. And now we're kind of just into the gains from Friday, from when we did get this Fed rate cut. So for Ethereum, if you guys are trading it, I'm personally going to be watching it to the downside for now, and then looking to see if we can fill these gaps back down to like 42. But with that being said, if we can fill the gaps back upwards, we could probably retest the highs of 5,000. So please have your patience overall for Ethereum. Bitcoin, honestly, Bitcoin is one that's kind of been moving a little bit slower. And honestly, Ethereum's just been blowing it out of the water. With that being said, though, if you guys do want to trade these, IBIT is a good ETF that moves with Bitcoin. We also have MSTR, which is just a stock that basically buys a bunch of Bitcoin. And then we also have Coin. Coin also moves overall with Bitcoin. And then we got Hood. Hood moves with the transactions of crypto in general, but it has been moving with crypto. So honestly, watch Robinhood as well. And then for Ethereum, ETHA is an ETF that moves with Ethereum. You can make a decent amount of money with this one as well, especially if you want to do some calls and puts and you guys are just normal stock traders. It's trading at $34 right now. But if we get back up to the highs, we can get up to like 37 to 37.10. So keep that in mind. If we do start rallying back up with Ethereum or start selling off, you can do some pretty decent day trades with ETHA and some other of these stocks that I mentioned. We did get some good trade news, so I'm just going to summarize it. I went through it more on Saturday's video, so if you guys are interested in going more in depth with the news overall, you guys can watch that video. But we did have Canada set to remove the retaliatory tariffs on many US products, and we also had the EU come out with a 15% tariff when it was supposed to be a 25% tariff. So it looked pretty good overall for the market. But going more deeper and basically diving more deeper into the SPY, I'm going to be watching that 643 level flat, that 641, and then that 639 right after that. So watch these levels. These are going to be some key levels to the downside for the overall SPY. Before we go more in depth, let's go towards the earnings and the stock market calendar overall. So there's nothing really major. We're just going to summarize most of the earnings. You guys can screenshot this list if you guys want it. But of course, we got Dollar General, Best Buy, Dell. Those are going to be decent on Thursday. And we also have a decent amount on Thursday for the stock market calendar, which we're going to get to next. And we also got Alibaba. Also, I'm going to be watching Baba. Baba has been moving pretty decently. But with that being said, something big that people are waiting for is going to be NVIDIA, and that is going to be on Wednesday. So keep NVIDIA on your radar. Like I said earlier, man, 8% of the S&P 500. And the implied move is like 7 to 8% for NVIDIA overall, and that can move the stock a decent amount. So if we do move 7 to 8% up or down, that can move the overall SPY up or down. All right, so today we got new home sales coming out. We got a speech and some speeches basically. New home sales isn't really going to move the market too much, but it has the potential to. So that's 30 minutes after market opens. Tuesday, an hour before market opens, we have durable good orders, and then we got minus transportation. And then 30 minutes before, we have the S&P case home price index coming out, and then 30 minutes after is consumer confidence. This can potentially move the market, so keep that in mind for tomorrow, 30 minutes after market opens. Wednesday, right now, we have none scheduled, but stay tuned. There might be something that gets added. Thursday is going to be a bigger day. We have the initial jobless claims. This can move the market. That's going to be an hour before market opens. Also, the GDP, pending home sales, and then we have a speech. And then on Friday, we have a little bit more than last week, other than, the Jackson Hole. But with that being said, on this Friday, the 29th, we have personal income, personal spending, PCE, core PCE. We have trade balances and goods, retail inventories, and wholesale inventories. And this is all an hour before market opens. And then 15 minutes after market opens, we have the business PMI. And then we got the consumer sentiment final 30 minutes after market opens. So keep this all on your mind and on your radar for trading on Friday, because honestly, it seems like a big day. We also have a lift for the S&P 500 to 6,600 on basically the better earnings that we had. But with that being said, man, let's get to some supports and resistance. We already kind of went through the SPY, so let's move down the line and let's go to Apple first. So Apple is kind of looking a little bit weaker than other stocks right now. So right now, I am kind of bearish on Apple, especially if we look at how it's been moving. Like previously, we have been making some lower lows. With that being said, I am going to be watching the lows that we had before the Jackson Hole, but first one is going to be that 225.5, and then going down to 224, 223.5, and then that 220 level past that is going to be that 220, 215, 210. A call option that I'm personally going to be looking for the long term, especially if we do have that September big sell off. I'm going to be watching a long term call option at that 210. And even if we itch down lower than that, especially that 200, 202 to that 205, a call option there could play pretty well. Right now, Apple isn't really looking too strong right now. And honestly, I'm probably not even going to be playing it for this week. And I might just wait until the September sell off. I think NVIDIA just looks pretty strong right now in anticipation for their earnings. It's not really selling off too much, but it is kind of making a little bit more of a sell. We got to wait for market open to really determine where it's going to go. With that being said, for call option, I'm personally going to be looking at that 175.5 to the lows of 172.5. But if we sell off that much, lose all of Friday's gains, basically, it's probably going to look a little bit more bearish. So if we do get below that 172.5, that might be where we could play some longer term put options. But that's going to be like after the earnings, honestly. I don't think I want to play a put option right before the earnings, because honestly, I feel like the earnings for NVIDIA is going to be 50-50. Even if they beat, they can still sell off. But with that being said, they have to say something that investors love. But with that being said, to the upside, man, let's look at some highs and go back up to like the 183 to the 184. But on the way there, look at 180, 181.5, 182.5, 183.5, 184, and 185. But just have your time and patience with the video overall. And keep in mind that if you guys are option traders like me, the premiums are going to be shot up pretty high for their earnings. So please keep that in mind overall. Next is going to be ATAI. I personally been watching this one myself, and we're kind of just staying in this range, which is pretty good. I'm going to be watching for, a little bit of a sell off. I might have my stop loss placed at 420. I bought it at 260. So honestly, man, that's pretty decent. But if you guys do want to get a chance to load up, if we could see it fall down to that 360 level, I'm probably going to load up there and or just sell at that 420 and then load back up at that 360. But if we start falling down even more, that 260 level can be a good level to watch. But just watch ATI to the upside. I'm watching that $5 level next. And honestly, if it could break past $5, we might maintain and hold that $5 level. Next one on the list is indeed AMD, another one that's kind of moving like Apple. It's not really moving as strong like Nvidia or anything like that. With that being said, this can move with Nvidia's earnings, and the options aren't going to be, priced in as much as Nvidia, so the premium isn't really going to be shot up. With that being said, though, you can watch it to the downside for now, especially with the way that we're moving. So to the downside, look at that 165.5, 163.5, 161.5, and that 160 level. To the upside, look at 168, 169.5, 170, 171.5, and that 173.5. With that being said, a good call option to watch is going to be that 165. If we get a clear bounce off of that, it can look a little bit more bullish overall if we do sell off. But with that being said, do be wary because we can probably bounce all the way down, back down to its lows of that 161.5. So if we do see how we react to that, then the next level can probably be that 158.5 from that level. So you can play a put option until then, maybe sell it at with that 159 just to be safe. But with that being said, man, just be cautious with AMD and just other stocks in general. Tesla is one that made a little bit bigger of a move than any other stock, and that was a 6.2% move back up to the upside. So if we do start itching up higher, look at that 342, 345, and that 350 level next. But if we do start itching down lower, look at that 335, 330, and that 325 level. With that being said, Tesla does move a decent amount. You can make a shit ton of money with options, but just please be on the right side or you can lose a lot of money as well. Next one, with all of these deals coming out, man, we have Google up 3% and is looking pretty decent. We got Gemini that can potentially be implemented into the iPhone, so that could be a good deal that happens. And then we have a $10 billion deal with Meta or Microsoft. I forgot which one. I think it's Meta. But with that being said, to the upside, I'm going to be watching that 210 level. If we could break past that, look at 211.5 and 215. This one moves pretty slow on a normal day, so keep that in mind. I think Friday was one of the biggest days that we've seen in a while. But with that being said, to the downside, look at that 205.5, 204, 202.5, and that 201 level for Google overall. And next one I want to look at is Palantir, PLTR. This one is kind of itching up a little bit higher, but we can still be in that sell-off range that we've been in for a while, honestly. It was on like a big losing streak, but we kind of gained back the past couple of days. But with that being said, if we don't itch up higher, regain these highs of 163, I think we could probably get a little bit lower, maybe get back down to the lows. So watch that 154. If we break down below that, look at 151.5, 150, and then the lows of 142. But with that being said, please be cautious with Palantir. If we do see it break below that 142, we might see a little bit more bearish action coming into Palantir, especially with the September seasonality. With that being said, though, man, good luck trading this week. Smash that like button, subscribe if you guys are new. Main sectors in watch right now is going to be chips and crypto, just because of the big moves that we had over the weekend. But let's stay green. Comment down below what stocks you guys are watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.